Hello, everybody, and welcome to East Africa Com. We've got a keynote presentation here on exploring East Africa's connectivity map. I've got some great speakers on our panel. We've got Andy Halsall, who is the CEO of Power Internet. We've got Deepu Pillai, who is Manager for Strategy and Markets at Intelligence for SES. And we've got Fogani Tambayuk from Meta, formerly Facebook, as we all know. So, gentlemen, welcome. And we're all very pleased to be part of East Africa Com. Hopefully the last virtual event of the year. And we all look forward to Africa Com in November, 25th anniversary, and hopefully live. So that's going to be great. But so exploring East Africa's connectivity map. East Africa is probably one of the fastest digital growth areas on the continent, and some lots of exciting opportunities and things going on there. But if we look at the continent of Africa as a whole, there's been an unprecedented connectivity infrastructure boom. If you look at the last sort of say 3, 4, 5 years, there's about 25 undersea cables, no less than 25 undersea cables wrapping the continent. We've got tower infrastructure that has been completely re-engineered with tower codes taking over, infrastructure sharing opportunities. We've got fiber networks connecting north and south. Cape to Cairo is connected. Douala to Dar es Salaam is connected. East-west. Those are fiber backbones. Then you've got a myriad of smaller fiber codes that are connecting up regions, countries, towns, villages, and so on. We've got satellite networks. We've got LEO. We've got GEO. We've got MEO. We've got a whole series of these LEO satellites coming online in the next 3 or 4 years. We've got 4G, which is almost ubiquitous in most urban areas. 5G is on its way, and devices are getting cheaper and smarter as we go. So all the ingredients are there for fantastic connectivity, but we're still sitting with a usage gap in Africa that is disproportionate to the rest of the world. The coverage gap is negligible these days. I think it's 3% of the world is not covered. But in Africa, we're still sitting with a 19% coverage gap, rural areas primarily. But more worryingly and more disturbing is what they call the usage gap. These are people who have got access to the internet, but are not actually using it. Why? What are the problems with that? The usage gap in the world we're looking at a 19% coverage gap in Africa, but the usage gap is at 53%. So more than half of Africa's population are not connected to the internet. Why? Despite all of these ingredients that the continent has got. So I'd like to put this to our panel to have a conversation around the connectivity map in East Africa specifically, touching on the rest of Africa and how we're sort of going to go forward. So let's look at these subsea cables, the ones that wrap the continent. How are they working? And what are the challenges that they present for countries, landlocked countries, and taking it from the sea, where you've got tremendous amount of capacity, and bringing it into these underserved areas. I'd like to throw that one to a satellite network of all things, and see, what do you think, Deepu?
Yeah, so Dion, that's a very good question. We have seen that the subsea cables have kind of expanded into the region, especially as you said, the last few years we saw the subsea cable have expanded a lot in the region. So very recently, the East Africa has seen the peace cable landing in Mombasa in Kenya, and I think Meta is also kind of sponsoring the 2 Africa cable that is going to come online pretty soon. But what we see is that even though the subsea cables have kind of increased a lot of capacity that is coming into the market, the operational fiber networks within Africa hasn't reached everywhere. So currently it is estimated that only 55% of the African population lives within the 25-kilometer range of an operational fiber node. So this is kind of like, so that means that almost 45% of the Africans are not kind of living far away from the fiber node. And this means that the connectivity is very challenged. And so can I just interrupt for a minute?
Sure, Deepu, thanks, because that's a very good segue that I can lead into Fagani.
Yeah.
Fagani, you head up the connectivity policy for Meta, and you guys are you actually have undersea cables, and as well as building out end user infrastructure on the ground. How do you see this evolving, and how has it performed to date?
Yes, so thank you, Dion, and many thanks for having us here today, Meta. It's a real pleasure and privilege to be taking part in this very important panel discussion. I think maybe I'll start by maybe highlighting the work we're doing in the space and really share with the audience what we're trying to achieve with To Africa. So when completed in 2024, To Africa would be the longest subsea cable ever deployed in the world. It would be about 45,000 kilometers, and it would be connecting Africa to Europe and the Middle East all the way to India. It's the first cable of its kind, in the sense that it's the first cable that was designed to connect both the eastern seaboard and the western seaboard of Africa. Other cables do not connect both seaboards, so To Africa is the first of its kind, and really it's a timely investment, and we're really delighted that we're making this investment in partnership with multiple Pan-African operators like MTN, Orange. We also partner with China Mobile, Saudi Telecom. So some of the key players in the world, Vodafone, for instance, in Africa, to really make sure that this investment really transform the connectivity landscape of Africa. And it's really, if we want to bring it to the East African region in particular, you'd realize if we consider countries like Kenya, where we plan to land, or Tanzania, we realize that the existing cables there, a lot of them were built pre-2020, pre-2012. And what would happen is, given the constraints in technology, usually cable lifetimes are 25 years, given the constraints in technology, by 2025, a lot of these cables will be reaching their maximum capacity. Given the population growth, we're expecting a lot of the population, the youthful population of Africa, to really be coming online by 2025 with a lot of connectivity demands. It's really timely that Meta with its partners are deploying this cable. I would say for us, we believe that what is required is we need to make these investments to ensure that Africa has the necessary capacity to for 2025 and beyond, ensuring that the digital transformation of the continent is supported by this infrastructure. What is required in our view is that we need innovation in the policy and regulation. As we continue to implement this project, we've realized that as compared to the West, a lot of the regulation that governs this space in Africa is dated. And it's time for us to start having those conversations around what do we need to do to make sure that all Africans, all service providers can leverage or benefit from this international capacity and really enable people have affordable access. We'll need to ensure that open access, because that's a principle that underpins this investment, is real. We have situations on the continent where the cross-connect fees are regulated. So before anyone can connect to the system, they need to pay very exorbitant fees. But we want a situation where those cross-connect fees on the To Africa system are comparable to the fees we see in the West, very cost effective or cost based. We also have situations where there's a limitation on how you can configure your cable landing station. To Africa, it's really built on the premise that it's going to land in carrier neutral data centers, or it's going to enable operators connect to this capacity very easily. And if you have situations where even the configuration of the cable landing station is fixed by law and you cannot innovate and try different configurations, it limits how ISPs or service providers can connect and leverage that international capacity that is landing. But we also need innovation on the other side. So I think one of the key questions you asked was, what do we need to do to ensure that this capacity doesn't just stay on the shores but benefits all of Africa? We need innovation that would allow easy terrestrial builds. In some jurisdictions, for instance, there are instances where just the rights of way to build fiber it's very high or difficult to get. So we need innovations around that to enable service providers to come in, invest, and extend that transport network to really transport that international connectivity. You would also need to have more spectrum made available, because some of the technologies that will be used by people to access this connectivity require unlicensed spectrum. For instance, we need unlicensed spectrum in the 6 gigahertz band. We need spectrum to be made readily available for mobile operators to easily build or roll out these new 5G networks. But we also need innovation on the supply side. So innovation in the policy and regulation around devices. Again, just tackling why there's not been that much uptake. You need devices to become more affordable. You need to look at ways of financing smart devices. You need to, so there's a lot that we need to do. And really, I think for us as Meta, we came to partner with policymakers, local partners, ISPs, to see how we come together and really innovate on the policy and regulation side, but also on the business models. And maybe we could talk about that further down the line, as well as how the innovation on the technology side, because what's also happening in Africa is that we have new innovative technologies that are being developed, but the existing policies, the existing regulations don't allow those technologies to be really rolled out quickly across the continent. So I'll stop there, Dion.
Well, that's a ton of information to unpack there, because there's a tremendous. I think the key word there is complex. It's not a simple case of let's just roll it out. Oh yes, all those ingredients, that infrastructure is there, but it's the integration of it all is complex, and then the business modeling. Another key word you brought out that really resonates with me is open access, ubiquitous access to the internet. I'm a firm believer that Africa's youth is, as I mentioned, going to be key to our planet going forward. You're talking about affordable access in 2025. That leaves us only 25 years, one generation before 2050. And 2050, there are going to be 500 million youth in Africa. That's 500 million 14 to 24-year-olds. That's a global asset. If you think about the rest of the world that's getting really old, we're all going to be pensioners if we're lucky at that point. So, these are the kids that are going to be servicing those pension savings platforms, servicing the medical aids and all the rest. So we need to invest in them right now. The only way we're going to do that is by connecting them. Essentially connected, engaged, informed, and contributing youth are the ones that are going to be driving this planet going forward. At the moment, that's not the case. It's not happening. However, there are guys on the ground like you, and in particular, when you look at last mile, Andy, you guys are at the sharp end of service delivery. You've just managed to do a great investment, significant, and I'd love for you to sort of expand on a little bit of what Fagani was saying and Deepu as well, in terms of how this infrastructure has impacted on you and how you can get it to the people.
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, thank you for having me here, and also for making me feel old with those comments about the youth. So I'm feeling very decrepit all of a sudden. But solving this problem is quite complex. There's a sort of long value chain to get, connectivity to customers. So it's great that people like Meta and Google and others are bringing in more input capacity to the continent. But if it just stays on the shores, then it's not going to solve the problem. So there's this quite long, complex supply chain then to get from the sea cables to end users. So there's a whole series of steps need to happen. We need more sort of middle mile fiber. We need more metro fiber. We need more last mile distribution fiber. We also need, these technologies don't stand alone. So, it's pointless saying we're going to have fiber to the home across the whole of Africa. It's not going to happen. I mean, the cost of building that infrastructure, the terrain, the geography, versus the amount of money people can spend on it, it simply isn't going to justify fiber to every location. So we've got to look at other technologies, and 4G and 3G and 5G are part of that equation. Unlicensed spectrum, Wi-Fi type technologies are another part of that spectrum. So we're going to end up with a quite a complex ecosystem downstream compared to and probably quite unique compared to other parts of the world. If you look at Europe or the US, certainly urban areas, you can justify building fiber to everybody. What's happening, of course, in Africa is you get pockets of fiber to the richer communities, and the economics simply aren't there to build to the poorer communities. So, people like ourselves and others are working at how do we bridge from where the fiber finishes into these communities. Technologies like satellite will fill a role in particularly in rural, where it's really, really difficult to stretch kind of ground-based technologies into those places, but they don't necessarily suit urban areas particularly well. So we're going to end up with this kind of mishmash of different technologies and different sort of delivery techniques to reach to all of these locations, and each has their own set of economics, each has their pros, their cons. Fiber is great, it can deliver high capacity, but it's very expensive and very geographically constrained. Satellite is, to be frank, quite expensive, though will come down in price, I think, over the next few years as these different constellations come online. And so different terrains, different people are going to end up with different types of connectivity. The overall trick is, how do we ensure that there's sufficient investment in all of these things? There's places where the investment case is stronger, there's places where the investment case is weaker. And ultimately, we're going to have to work out ourselves and others who particularly are focused on the kind of last mile piece. How do we really get to the end customer? How do we mishmash all of these different things together? And then to Fargani's point, in things like government policy, taxation, things like that can be used to help guide and drive these kind of investment decisions. But there's not going to be one size fits all to solve this. But certainly more fiber around the coast, driving lower input prices, driving more capacity is a starting point. We now need that same process to keep working as we go further and further into the continent.
So complex mix match, as you say. Deepu, I can tell there's a whole ton of things you can fill in on that one.
Yeah, so Andy and Fargani, resonated the ideas pretty well, because even though there is tons of capacity coming into the as a submarine cable more landing into the market, we don't see that capacity being brought to the inland countries, especially in the landlocked countries. We saw that the connectivity is very poor, and if you take the overall sub-Saharan Africa market, the fixed broadband connectivity is only 10%. Compared to the mobile broadband connectivity, which is almost 30%. So this is a main challenge, and I would say that the satellite technologies are becoming more and more efficient these days to kind of bring down the cost of connectivity to these inland areas. And for many of our current O3B sites, we are seeing that we are serving the urban areas as well, like in addition to the rural areas. So if you see, these are the high throughput connectivity links that we are providing to the mobile operators like Airtel, MTN, Orange, so Vodacom. So in many of these countries where we can provide them a lower total cost of ownership solution, because our cost efficiencies have kind of allowed us to connect to those areas even in the urban areas where we can coexist with the fiber. And this is also one of the main challenge, Dion, because in Africa, because when you're talking about the fiber in Africa, there is a big challenge of availability as well. Even in the case of submarine cables, we are seeing more than 5 to 10 times the fiber submarine cable cuts a year. Globally, we see almost 200 times there is per year the submarine cables are having disruptions. And this happened in Madagascar in 2017. The EC cable was cut, and the average time to repair the cable was 15 days. And they brought in the O3B solutions, and we first provided almost 500 megabit, and then we were asked to double the capacity, and we could provide almost 1 gigabit of capacity, and the connection was restored in a much shorter time compared to what it would have taken for the cable to get repaired and then the connectivity restored. So we are now seeing that as a big opportunity for us, because if you take the case of Tonga, which is a Pacific island, there also very recently the submarine cable was cut, and that was the only submarine cable connecting that island. And then SAT-8, in fact, SES played a major role in restoring the connectivity, and that was the only connectivity to bring back the mobile networks back to life. So we see, even though there would be a lot of these submarine cables coming into the market, there could be opportunities for us to provide more resilient connectivity. And since the cables are not being able to support more inland network expansion, or they won't be able to expand into areas where there is low population density because of, as Andy said, the economics doesn't allow for the fiber to have the last mile connectivity to reach the home. So there would be a lot of demand for mobile backhaul. So this is to connect the towers, and here we see a big opportunity in Africa, and especially as you mentioned, currently 3G is the main technology connecting Africa, but we see 4G increasing quite a lot. Currently it is about 15% penetration, but it will almost get doubled over the years. So we would see that this would increase the data demand. And as you mentioned, again, the youth population, they are driving the demand because they would need more and more Netflix streaming, more and more cloud applications. So I heard during the COVID time in South Africa, Vodacom reported that the traffic increase over mobile networks due to Netflix streaming was almost 65% compared to what they see in their fixed network, which was only 26%. So this would be the demand that will be driving this market. And we are pretty sure that, because we are bringing our next generation constellation, which can support this demand going all the way up to multiple gigabit of capacity. So we are well positioned to target those markets. And we believe that there could be a play for everyone, for fiber, satellite. So it would be a multi-technology play to address these connectivity issues in the market. Yeah,
I think certainly the multi technology plays is key. You mentioned COVID, and one of the very few, I suppose, silver linings in the whole COVID pandemic has been a compression of 5 years of digital awareness into 1 year or less. But has that actually impacted on Africa as such? Well, I think everyone's realized what they didn't have as opposed to what they did. But of course, it has opened up people's needs and wants. For Ghani, I want to follow up just from what Deepu was sort of saying, and some of the challenges, that the terrestrial technologies face, and how satellite can potentially offset some of those risks. You guys have been at the front end, right up at the last mile delivery. You're now the submarine or undersea cables as well. You're involved in fiber, and then you're also the platform itself. So, do you think satellite? What do you think is the technology of the future here? Where do we in Africa need to go?
I think as a company, Meta doesn't believe that there's a silver bullet or there's one technology that would help eradicate this connectivity divide that continues to persist on the continent. As a company, we do believe that all technologies have their place, and it's now for us, private sector, to work with government and regulators to ensure that all these technologies can be deployed in whatever shape or form across the continent. Yes, so that's the key message for me, is that there's no one technology that would solve this issue or this challenge. We just need to make sure that we have in place the right environment, that the different ISPs, entrepreneurs, innovators that want to come in and deploy, whether it's traditional technologies that we're quite familiar with or new technologies that are emerging, they are able to do so. On the specific question on satellite, we do believe that satellite has its place, and we've actually seen a business model innovation around satellite, where satellite companies are now pairing satellite with Wi-Fi. So it's now become like satellite Wi-Fi to provide connectivity to the end users in rural areas. And again, due to the cost savings that Deepu was mentioning, we've seen that this is a very effective business model, and it's actually enabling people in really rural areas to get access to high-speed connectivity. A good example would be, I think there's a satellite provider that's doing this in DRC. I know, so that's Eutelsat Connect. So I know they've done this in DRC, and they continue to expand this sort of service of pairing satellite with Wi-Fi to connect people in rural areas. One which is not on the African continent, but still relevant to us because we share the same type of urban-rural divide, and we can look to them for inspiration, is Hughes in Latin America, where they're also doing something similar to what Eutelsat Connect is doing. And I'm sure SES also has their own solution where they're pairing satellite with Wi-Fi. And this has proven effective in connecting rural areas. We also have new technologies. There's a technology that Meta developed, Telegraph, which allows people to access gigabit wireless connectivity or fiber-like speeds, but it's really doing it over spectrum, and this is a very innovative technology that, if allowed to be deployed on the continent, will transform the connectivity landscape, especially in those areas where it's difficult to deep trenches and roll out fiber. This is an alternative to that. But the challenge there is that a lot of our regulators in Africa have not yet made that 60 gigahertz band available on an unlicensed basis. And I think the African Telecommunications Union actually did a very important policy initiative last year, where Meta and others took part in creating policy and regulatory recommendations that, if mainstreamed or adopted by African nations, would allow some of these innovative technologies like Wi-Fi 6E, Telegraph, and others to be really deployed rapidly across the continent. So yes, so I hope I've answered your question in the sense that for us, it's not just one technology. We believe there's a place for mobile, there's a place for fiber, there's a place for Wi-Fi, satellite. So we all need these technologies, or even the emerging ones. I think what we need to do as a continent or as a region of East Africa is look at what are the roadblocks to preventing these technologies from being rolled out affordably on the continent, and putting in place the right frameworks to enable ISPs, operators, even innovators, because we've seen instances where innovators are trying to leverage new technologies and roll out infrastructure, try out new business models, but they're not able to because of existing legacy regulatory frameworks.
There's a lot there, and again, it just highlights the complexity. The connectivity map of East Africa, and by default Africa as a continent, is complex. It's not simple. I've been involved in connecting unconnected communities in rural areas, primarily some of the urban unconnected as well, for over 15 years. And I still find it hugely disappointing to see the mobile operators rolling out 2G technology today, with an option to upgrade to 3G. It's like, really, guys, and the excuse or the rationale behind that is there's no smartphone penetration, there's no demand, there's digital illiteracy, et cetera. But it all starts with connectivity, and once you have connectivity, the devices will follow. They will come in. The digital literacy will follow, it will come in, but it all starts with connectivity, and that this complexity is really, really important. And underlying all of it is the business modeling around it. The mobile operators are saying, well, it's not worth our while because there's no, it's not affordable. I would challenge them to go even further and sort of say, well, not only does it need to be affordable, it needs to be free. So Andy, we've known each other a while now, and I'm a great proponent of sort of open access. At least children educational learning platforms should be zero rated or free to the users. There are some initiatives that are doing this around the continent, but do you see that realistically from an end user's perspective, or from an end user supplier's perspective? Can we make this work as a free to user service? You're on mute, Andy.
Yep. So completely free for everybody is going to be tricky, because whether you're whichever technology, whichever operator you are, to build the infrastructure to get to these communities, whether urban, rural, rich, poor, there's a cost of doing that. And so, as an ISP, we have to make a return. We have shareholders, we have investors, and you can go to grants and so on, but there's only so much of that kind of money available. So eventually, we have to make a commercially sustainable model across the continent. Now, that can subsidize certain types of traffic. I mean, we give free internet to schools in the areas we pass. We see that as a kind of, as a community activity, but actually it's a commercial activity because it builds our relationship with the communities. That then becomes a platform to kind of sell into the community and so on. So, you can do it, but effectively what we're doing is cross-subsidizing. The cost of building our infrastructure or fiber or satellite or what have you, there is a cost to it, and eventually, the piper calls the tune, and you need to kind of pay back on that investment. The game we're all trying to get to, and certainly what we're focused on, is how do we drive that cost as low as we possibly can. So for us, it's about how do we get people consuming as much data as they possibly can for the lowest possible unit price. Each of these technologies limits that to a certain extent in different ways. So cellular has and 4G and 3G and 5G, they fundamentally have a model which is there's only so much data you can get through these networks, and therefore they all charge on the amount of data consumed. And that creates a mindset for the end customer, which limits what they can do. So the reality, this registering for this, this conference is free, and watching this is free if you have enough data connectivity. But the sad reality is most people are not going to be able to watch us having this conversation, because the amount of data they'll consume to watch this is beyond their entire monthly allowance. I think if memory serves, in Kenya, the average data user uses 200 megabytes of data. That's about 20 minutes of YouTube. So we've already expanded their entire monthly allowance. And whilst we're very intelligent and very interesting people, for most people, that there's only so much they want to watch us go on about this kind of stuff. Yeah. So the game is, how do we get that unit price as low as we possibly can, so people can afford as much as they possibly can. It's not about giving free. People value the internet, and people value using these services. But if you want to educate your kids online, and for them to be able to watch videos and watch a teacher online, you need video, and therefore you need to be paying cents per gigabyte, not dollars per gigabyte. Now, whether you pay per gigabyte or whether you pay for an unlimited service is kind of neither here nor there. The game really is, how do we get as much connectivity to as people, but it's no good just giving them a tiny thread of it, we need to give them as much volume as possible at the lowest possible price. Now, different technologies enable that in different ways. Some are more expensive, some are less expensive and higher volume. People, in reality, it's going to be quite some time before everybody gets to unlimited high volume internet. But, if we can get people able to consume at a tenth of the price of what they're doing today, they'll consume a lot more. And it won't be perfect, but that's a darn sight better than nothing. And so I don't think it's about ultimately delivering free services. It's ultimately about delivering the cheapest possible high volume service to people. And when you do that, all of those barriers you talked about in terms of literacy, in terms of device, start to fall away. You have to get cheap connectivity to people, then people can justify buying a smartphone, then people can justify going up the literacy curve. And it kind of, it goes round and round. If the opposite to that is that kind of downward spiral, which becomes that non-investment case, well, there's no users, there's no smartphones, there's no digital literacy, why bother? So there needs to be a leap of faith to unblock that, but then it becomes the lowest possible unit price. And the unfortunate fact is the further away you are from the sea cables, the more inland you are, the more rural you are, probably the higher that unit price will get. But there's things we and others can do, and all the parties on this call to try and get that unit price as low as possible. Once that happens, the game starts to reverse.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a fantastic summary of where we should be going. And Fagani, do jump in if you like here. But I want to put the question to Deepu in. The majority of demand comes from urban areas, and the majority of the usage gap, interestingly, is from urban areas where people are not using the coverage that they actually have. We touched on it a little bit earlier before we came onto the session. Where do you see satellite sort of coming into play? Everyone sees satellite as, okay, well, you can get into the very deep rural villages, and the backhaul for mobile for data is ideal through a satellite network. But if we're looking at bringing the cost of, or the affordability more realistic, and we're bringing the cost of access down, what role can satellite play in the urban areas? If you think about, new technologies, data cloud, data centers, cloud-based tech, and so on.
Yeah, that's in fact a very good point. So in fact, this is also a kind of perception of the satellite. Satellites are traditionally expensive. They cannot fill the data rates which were kind of demanded for the new 4G or the 5G or the cloud applications and stuff like that. But I think what we have been trying to do is we have been trying to differentiate from the traditional industry. We launched our medium earth orbit constellation, the O3B system back in 2014, and we have been kind of enabling the next generation mobile network technologies globally. For example, we have enabled the 3G, 4G networks in the African continent, in the Asia Pacific, in the Latin America. So because we were able to kind of provide, as I mentioned before, more than a gigabit of capacity to a single site, which was not heard of in the traditional satellite world. And this also comes at a very low latency. When we are operating at a medium earth orbit, we are talking about the latencies which are around 150 milliseconds round trip latency, which is required to run many of these 4G applications or the high performance applications or the cloud applications and all. And now we are extending that. We are going to launch our next generation satellite systems, which is called the O3B Empower, which would bring multifold capabilities into this market. So we would be kind of able to provide multiple gigabit of uncontended throughputs to sites. We can offer much more flexibility. We can decide to place the gateway where the customer wants. We can beamform so that the demand, we can serve the site according to the demand. We can change the forward return ratios, and we can kind of also scale the capacity served according to what the user demands. So I think this would create a lot of use cases in the urban areas, especially as we see that, I mean, the data growth is kind of exploding a lot. So it is expected that currently the average mobile data consumption in Africa per mobile phone is about 2 gigabyte, and this is expected to reach almost 9 gigabyte per month by 2025. This is the GSMA prediction, and this is all driven by the applications like the Netflix, video streaming, cloud applications and all. And I think this would place a bigger pressure on the mobile network operators, because they want to kind of expand their network, they want to densify their network, they want to make their networks ready for new 4G and later on in the 5G. I would say that 4G has still got a lot of gas in its tank in Africa compared to other regions where because 5G we expect it to come at a bit later stage in Africa. So we see that we would be able to kind of, with our next generation satellite technology and the O3b mPOWER that we are bringing, we would be able to bring in a lot of enabling a lot of these applications, especially the cloud connectivity applications, because you see there are a lot of cloud data centers in Africa which are located in areas where the terrestrial connectivity is not that good, and the connecting that to the cloud, that would be a major applications which would drive the demand we see. And the another thing we would like to see is or we are implementing is the new business models. We want to have more like the network as a service, because the MNOs don't want to kind of spend their capex on the tower infrastructure, so they want somebody who can extend their network, and they would like to pay only for the backhaul as a service or network extension as a service. And they want to also have new business models like pay as you go, pay as you grow, those kind of services. So rolling on the terminal capex into the OPEX. So those kind of things we are adopting so that we can enable those services. And
the price coming down, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we see. Because you see a lot of new technologies in the satellite industry, like the non-geostationary satellites, the reusable launch vehicle, the software-defined networks, which can kind of place the traffic according to the demand is and economics optimize on the traffic. So this would all kind of help to bring down the cost and also to enable the new applications that we see, 4G now and 5G in the future, and also the applications like the cloud applications. So yeah.
No, great. I see we've only got a couple of minutes left, but I want to. I always like to finish these with a bit of a prediction and put you guys on the spot. So, and Andy, you're the one that sort of triggered what I think could be quite an interesting one. The secret to connectivity is unlimited high volume access to the internet. And of course that all comes down to cost. And if we can take this complicated mishmash of infrastructure, technologies, platforms, and find a way to make them all work together with the regulators and everybody else, and provide this unlimited high volume to everybody ubiquitously across the continent, when do you guys think that could be real? Who's going to go first? Fagani.
Yeah, so I think for me, that's almost an impossible question to answer, the when. So I wouldn't attempt to answer that. I think what I'll do is I will answer the question you didn't ask, Dion.
Smart.
Which is what do we need to do collectively as an ecosystem, as an industry, to ensure that all Africans have access to high-speed connectivity? And I would say we need to do three things. We need to innovate on policy and regulation. We need to innovate on business models, and we also need to innovate on technology. Policy and regulation would allow would actually bring in more investments and allow new types of ways of rolling out the infrastructure. It will also address some of the things that need to be addressed if we want to close that usage gap. So things around devices, things around skills, without us being deliberate and really putting in place that enabling policy and regulatory measures that allow or that attract more investment in infrastructure, without us putting in place innovations around taxation, innovations around education that would enable Africans to develop the skills to really leverage this high-speed connectivity that would enable Africans to have the devices to connect and use the internet in a meaningful manner.
So not too complicated then.
We wouldn't be able to have everybody connect and use the internet meaningfully. Business model innovation, again, we've touched on some of those innovations there. People mentioned network as a service. I mentioned the pairing of satellite and Wi-Fi to connect the end users. So we need that business model innovation, and that would actually achieve what Andy was mentioning, bringing down the cost of delivering that internet and ensuring that everybody can access high capacities at very affordable prices. Then we also need to change the way we roll out networks. So right now, our regulators, so as an industry, we're used to rolling out networks in a particular way, but we need to look at the new technologies that are coming out and see how we can incorporate those to ensure that different types of operators are operating in Africa. That would also increase competition and ensure.
I think you're making it very complicated. You were not going to give us a time. I'm going to put the other two on the spot here. You've got 5 seconds each to give me a date. Deepu.
So I would say, I'm not going to give a quantitative date, but it's very, very soon. In a period of, I won't say it would be totally free, the services, because as I said before, the mobile network operators are kind of, when they are going for a all you can eat kind of plan, like unlimited volume plans, they are now seeing that their data network growth is expanding quite rapidly, but their revenue growth is not expanding as it you would have seen that curve.
So soon, we're looking at soon. Fantastic.
But
Andy,
sorry.
We need to. We're run out of time now, so I need to put Andy on the spot now.
I wish we had run out of time before I have to answer this. I don't think it's quite as soon. I think to Falgani's point, different countries will go at different rates because of regulatory policy and tax and various other things. But in the countries that are open to making this happen, the vast majority, getting to a point where let's call it a vast majority of people can gain access to a relatively large amount of data at a reasonable price is a 10-year project from here, would be my unfortunate conclusion.
It is an unfortunate conclusion, but at least it's something to work towards. Gentlemen, Andy, Falgani, Deepu, thank you so much. Everyone who's listening, I hope there was lots of questions in there. We'll be live we can answer them for you. So please feel free to give us any questions you like. And thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.